Welcome to the 2019 Reading Now Network Data Tool. This is just a quick overview of the tools that are available. If you're familiar with the tool, one of the first things you'll notice is that instead of the schools that are near the line being gray, they're now yellow, so that when we're highlighting you can see them better. But just as a review for those who are not familiar with the tool, each circle represents a school. The larger the circle, the more students that were tested. On the vertical axis is the achievement scores for ELA. 0 represents the state average, and as you'll notice, all the schools on the left are above the state average, almost all the schools on the right are below the state average. The x-axis is multiple at-risk factors. The two biggest ones are poverty and chronic absenteeism, and the 0 represents the state average for poverty, which is about 48%, and the state average for chronic absenteeism, which is about 13%. As at-risk factors increase and they go above the state average, achievement is predicted to go down, which is predicted by this equation, which we often call a best fit line. Each school will pop up with information as you hover over the different circles. Lake Hills has really improved itself over the last several of years and continues to be a very high performer. Every time you hover over a school, you will see some additional information, such as whether it's urban or rural or suburban. You'll also see the at-risk number. That is how far above or below it is from the state average. So you might think of this as like 7% below the state average with at-risk factors such as poverty, chronic absenteeism, English learners, special ed. You'll see those numbers of poverty and chronic absenteeism down below. That are some of the key factors for the multiple regression. You'll also see the ELA Z-score. That's an achievement score. 0.779 means that they are about 3/4 of a standard deviation above the state average. They test grades 3 and 4, and they have about 89 students within those two grades. Then you'll see the residual using the multiple factors for the past 4 years, and you'll see how they tend to be right around 0.7 each of the last 4 years. That means that if you went straight down to the line, you would expect them to have an ELA Z-score of about 0.14. But if I go directly up, we see they have a Z-score of 0.779. So the distance from the line to the school where it lands on the graph is called a residual. There's several things that you can do to change the view. One of which is if you only wanted to look at schools that were 3 through 8, you can see just those schools that would probably be a lot of our PSAs that cover 3rd through 8th grade, or probably kindergarten through 8th grade. You can also select a specific region. So if I wanted to turn off all the regions and turn on just region 3, where the Reading Now Network began, I can simply see the schools just in Mesa Region 3. The highlight feature is a little different, and in the highlight feature, it actually allows you to highlight an ISD, district, or a specific school. And what happens when we highlight is the graph, as you see, fades away, and then the red, yellow, and green dots, you can kind of see those pop a little bit so that you can see all the schools within the Ottawa Area ISD. We could do that for a district or for a building as well. If I choose Stocking Elementary, I can see that Stocking is in the green. It is above the line, and it's right about at the horizontal line, so they're performing at about the state average. But they have much greater at-risk factors than typically in the state. And if you look at their residuals, you'll see that currently they're at about a 0.419, but previous they're at a 0.3, in 2017 at a 0.2, and in 2016 at a 0.04. So you can see actually quite a bit of improvement with Stocking Elementary. And another way to look at that is at the top there are 4 tabs. There's an ELA trend tab, then there's a math tab that looks a lot like the ELA, and a math trend tab. The trend has actually 4 different graphs to it for the last 4 years. And if I did something similar and typed in stocking, I can actually see a visual representation from 2016 where you can see down here they were basically sitting on the line and right in the middle of that yellow section. The next year they're still in the yellow, but you'll see that they're almost in the verge of being in the green. The following year, in 2018, you can see that they're now in the green, but they're just below this dotted line which represents the state average. So they haven't quite reached state average yet. And then this year, not only are they higher in the green, but now they're actually performing as well as the state, even though they have significantly more at-risk factors. That is a brief look at the tableau for 2019, and as I mentioned, there is math data as well. I tried to highlight the math versus the ELA since the graphs look very similar with the red, yellow, and green. The other thing that you might be interested in besides the 2019 tableau is how to filter data and take a look at the online table. And if we click here on the online table, in the table you'll see all the schools in the state actually sorted from the highest residual in ELA in 2019 to the lowest. The nice thing about the table is you can filter right down to your school, your district, your ISD, or your region, and you can look at some of those trend numbers that we were seeing earlier graphically. For example, on the building, I can clear all the buildings so that nothing shows up. I can type in stocking and I click OK, and all I will is see stocking elementary, and it's the same data that you saw on the graph. They went from being basically on the line with a 0.04 to being well in the green at a 0.4. If you look at math, which we didn't look at graphically, they went from a 0.18 all the way to a 0.74. So tremendous improvement with stocking, definitely something to celebrate there. In addition to looking at a building, we can also look at a district, ISD, or a region. And the nice thing about looking at the district, if I clear all the districts and look at maybe West Ottawa, when I have multiple schools like West Ottawa or Grand Rapids or others, I can actually not only look at the building trend, but if I highlight the column for the 19 residual, down here in the corner, you'll see that it can add up the numbers or simply take the average, and I can see that my average is about a 0.29. Now the nice thing about that is I can take a look at all 4 averages and see how my district is moving across the last 4 years, and I can do that both for ELA or math. The other thing that you'll notice about the table is that it will run much of the demographic data, such as whether they are rural or suburban, the percentage of economically disadvantaged students, chronic absenteeism, English learners, special ed, and then you have where all the data is plotted on the graphs, which is probably better to see visually than here on the table. So that is just an overview of all the 2019 data. I hope this was helpful.